Did you all just wake up?
Yes.
Nothing better to do? My name's Luke. I make games. I've made games for about 10 years. Some of you were like best friends, some of you and I. Who has been to more than one of my presentations this weekend? Oh, you guys. Alright, who has done the hat trick? Who's done all three? I have. Okay, yeah, we'll talk later. Special prizes. Okay, so I make role-playing games. I love role-playing games, and I think about role-playing games a lot. I talk about role-playing games a lot. So I write about role-playing games a lot. So I thought I would share some of my thoughts on why I think RPGs are awesome. So normally I do this with my lovely assistant, Jared Sorensen, who would be my straight man for jokes or whatever. But so just imagine that this tall, pale goth dude is standing there like making fun of me. Right, but let's get rolling. So yeah, RPGs are awesome. So let's talk about why. I'm gonna take you through some maybe theoretical things. And we're gonna kind of maybe pull apart the inner workings of some RPGs. And then we'll zoom out a little bit and talk about them from a cultural perspective too. All right. So yeah. So why, right? Why are RPGs awesome? Duh. Okay, so what else are we going to talk about for the next hour? We're done. Right? This is it. And then after D&D, this is the pinnacle of RPG, the pinnacle of technology. Yes, I miss you too, Kestrel. Or maybe not. So the main point of contact in a role-playing game, in like 99.9% of role-playing games, is the role that you play, the character, right? This is your main interface. Now, we'll talk about the game master and the referee and that stuff later, but for the vast majority of players and for the vast majority of play, your point of contact with the game is a character. So what's a character? A character is nothing. A character is a nothing of a nothing until play begins, right? Until you begin making decisions. That's what a character is. And your collection of numbers and all your alignments and all those things, maybe they're the first decision that you've made about your character. Maybe. But until you make decisions in action, the audience doesn't know who the fuck you are, or what you care about, what you're doing, or why. But through actions, over time, through leaving your home world, joining the Rebel Alliance, fighting your father, rescuing your friends, like, suddenly we know about your character, we know more, not suddenly actually, over time we know about your character, and we sympathize, we enjoy this character. So, as our main point of contact, these decisions are vital. What kind of decisions are we making in a role-playing game? Well, role-playing games are amazing in the decision-making world. We have distilled it down to 5 types of decisions that you're making. Tactical, moral, emotional, avatar, and social decisions. And there's no type of game which stresses all of these decisions in the same way, that brings them all into the game in the same way that an RPG does. You're going to find games, maybe even all 5 of these exist, but they just don't have the same weight. So let's talk about tactical. So tactical is the really easy one. Tactical is, what's my chance of doing this? My chances are bad. Is there another way? Can I, I don't want to lose these hit points. I will sit out this round. Is it good for me to cooperate? Is it with you right now, or should I knife you in the back? Is it going to advance my character if I knife you in the back? Like, that's a tactical decision. Moral decisions. Moral decisions are your own players' attitudes. You're about like it says, your ethics and your traditions and things like that. RPGs, to me, like if I don't know, I could do a whole presentation just on moral decisions in RPGs. I think this is the most important thing. I think moral decisions are in fact what separates RPGs from, or elevates them above any other type of game. Who here has played a war game? A war game. Who here has played like a World War II era war game? World War II era? Okay, anyone play Axis? Right, okay. Has anyone who played the Axis, this is a small minority of wargamers in here, but have any of you who played the Axis ever said, you know what, my tank commander can't go on, he disagrees with the politics of the regime? No. None of you. Emotional decisions. So because RPGs are so engaging, they get their hooks into you so deeply, and that you are, as a human being, are sitting there immersed in this story and making these decisions, we tend to get our emotions wrapped into this, into the game very quickly. Lizzie Stark, I think, borrowed a term from the Swedes, maybe, calling it bleed, where your in-game emotions bleed into your real life, and your real life emotions bleed into your character. But anytime that you yourself are feeling angry or whatever, and you make a decision, because you had a bad day at work, so you're like, fuck it, I just want to fight. You've made an emotional decision. That's not a tactical decision anymore. It doesn't matter if you're the best fighter in all the world, you've made an emotional decision in the game, and you're affecting the game world with that decision. It's really interesting. I mean, you can make emotional decisions in other games. This is not unique to RPGs, but they tend to be very prevalent because we're so involved in these games. And then the avatar-based decisions. So this is the classic, what would my character do? And this is, as we say, like, avatar-based decisions tend to bring out the worst in us. This is where we tend to be assholes to one another, right? Well, that's what my character would do. Where everyone's like, don't destroy the thing, but my character would destroy the thing. Thanks. So it can also be good though too. It can also be, you can, for the truly immersed, for someone really focused on their character, you can make great decisions saying, very interesting twists on the story. Rather than making a decision from your own current emotional state, trying to think about where your character is and choosing from there. And then lastly, of course, are social decisions. So when you're sitting around the table, this is also, I imagine it is not only my favorite, or one of my favorite things, but it's also your favorite thing, like looking other players in the eye at the table and relating to them and talking to them is such a dynamic and engaging part of role-playing games. It's something that is, obviously we can play cards together and do things like that, but when we're talking in funny voices to one another around the table, when we're making moral decisions, we're making tactical decisions together, it brings in this beautiful social dynamic. But games that do not acknowledge that the social dynamic has a weight on play, or they're forgetting something massive. So yeah, like if like a social decision, like the example says, like somebody you are feuding with is playing tonight, and you're like, nah, forget it, I'm not gonna come. I won't play. It doesn't matter. I don't care if it's the climax session. I'm not. That guy's there. I'm not gonna play. But we'll talk about all of these more. So there is the 1979, I think, D&D character sheet. So you'll notice that there's no address for, or very little address for social, but no address for moral decision making there, because moral decision making is something that happens live. It's something that you do in the moment. But your saving throws. Your gear, your hit points, those are all tactical pointers for you to make decisions based on. What I really like actually is that the stats can allow you to enter both tactical and avatar-based decisions. You can say, well, my character's really strong. I'll try to lift the thing, even though that it's trapped or something along those lines. You can really use those numbers as pointers to get into the game and make those decisions. So typically, the social, emotional, and moral decisions, though, are happening in a nimbus around the avatar-based and tactical decisions, right? These, they're friends. This is their regular game night. They're all very excited about it. They have plenty of snacks. They have tea, so they're feeling good. They've all had a great day at work. Look, they're all so happy. And they are about to, they're debating whether or not to execute these prisoners. Prisoners that have been starved, so should we feed them? No, we can't afford to feed them. But the classic moment in early role-playing that pretty much is almost guaranteed to nuke any D&D group. Right? So, would you murder a helpless victim? This is a moral question. Who would murder the helpless victim? Come on, talk to me. With your hands. Yeah, okay, a few very moral fins, eh? Late more. Actually, can we save questions for the end? That'd be great, because we're going to go off the rails then. And then, right, you might just kill the goblin because you're sick of fighting goblins and you're bored and God, the fucking goblins, enough with the goblins. I want to go talk to the ogre. That is a real example from a real game. Right, so here though, this illustration is actually an illustration of avatar-based decisions in 1981 Moldvay edition Dungeons and Dragons. This is an illustration of alignments, right? So that's what Gary and company are saying here. They're saying, this is what chaos would do, this is what law would do, this is what neutral character would do. But there's so much going on in here. Has anyone ever feuded with the chaos player in their group who wants to burn the thing, kill the thing, because you're lawful, or even just neutral? Yeah, me too. I see it. And then the other side of it is, I'm playing chaos mage there, and Meryl's playing the lawful cleric, and I'm like, and I look over, and she's just like, if I back off from that, I have made a social decision in the game that has affected the game world. Pretty awesome. So yeah, I don't think she's here. So there you go. Right, what do you do? So hold on. I'm just curious. Now that we've set that up, right? Oh, where's it going? All right, whoever got it. Tell me what you do with the goblin. What?
I ask questions like, where's your loot?
All right, there you go. So you're neutral. Give me the back. Oh, all right, one more captured goblin.
If we didn't afford to feed him, kill him probably.
Yeah, okay, there you go.
It's a sensible thing.
Sensible thing to do is murder. Right, murder's always a sensible thing to do. I love how we rationalize murder in these games. That's not a moral decision, it's the sensible thing to do. We're not sociopaths when we play these games. Alright, so that's the decisions there. So now let's zoom out a little bit and look at the context of these decisions. And let's talk a little bit about the game and the interactions within the game. Before we go forward though, all right, there you go. I don't think role-playing games are storytelling games. I don't think there's any story in role-playing games. Boom. Look at that. All right. So, we'll talk about this. These are the real events of an RPG. This is what you do in a game. You don't kill any dragons. Nothing heroic happens. You're wiping things off your jeans so you can grab the dice and so the dice aren't greasy. That's the decision that you just made. But how many people, day after, here, a little show of hands, really get a thrill out of telling their coworkers or their parents or their friends about what happened last night in the game. Right? So check this out. I run a Dungeons & Dragons game at my office at Kickstarter, and I started doing some demos there, and there was interest, there's a lot of interest, but in fact, too much interest, so I tried to just call the group down. I got I waited for things to cool down. I got 6 players who I felt like out of the whole company would be the most interested to play. Good, okay, good. Nice simple thing. 6 players, big group, good group. They start playing, and then they come in the next morning, and they're talking about it in the kitchen. They're talking, and they're really excited, and people are like, what are you saying? What about the ogre? What is an ogre? What exactly? And they're like, and of course, we sound like cultists when we talk about this. And they're like, an ogre, it's this big, and it's got tusks, and it's got gold, and we stole its cheese. And then what happened was just, the next morning, by relating these events every time, every week, now I have 3 groups. I didn't recruit. I had people coming up to me being like, when can we play? There's in any given week, there's 16 to 20 people that are like, when are we playing? And not because the people from the game are going, yeah, well, I picked my nose a little bit, I got a really good booger from it. It's because they're really excited about killing goblins the next morning. Right, so that's the notion there it was. So there's this magic, beautiful thing that happens. We edit out all that stuff. There's something so powerful in this medium that we are able to the 2 hours that we spent bored staring at our phone, kind of poking away. We're able to completely forget that because we got to make the crucial roll, or we got to stand up and give the big speech in the last 20 minutes, and that's what we talk about. And we do this thoughtlessly. We're not. I never think I won't talk about the boring parts. Let me see if I can find something exciting to talk about. No, I just instantly, I just automatically edit these things. And what that does is it makes us all the author of these events. And this is what begins to turn them into stories. Now, I personally don't believe that my retelling is enough. I think that to begin to have the story and to begin to truly reflect the game, Katri and I both need to have our say. It is for role-playing games, since it's such a collective medium, all of the players create the story in the retelling. So it's each retelling that that builds into the story. So in fact, the ultimate story of an RPG, I think, is almost something mythical, unattainable, because it's not really possible to get all 5 or 6 or 3 or 4 perspectives, even in unison or in concert. But each of us has a segment or perspective of the story in our heads that is very, very powerful. But yeah, it makes us all authors. But then the flip side of that is that I'm watching you give the speech, right? We all are. Everyone in the room is watching you give the speech. And so, in addition to being the author, in the next morning, I'm going to tell this story, and I'm going to be the author of this story, but I'm also the audience. And in the moment, we're flipping rapidly back and forth. We're editing these events on the fly. We're authoring these, taking out all the garbage, putting together these amazing moments, but because we are also the audience, as well as the actors and the authors. It's something I think that we take for granted. I think it's something that's not very well understood. I don't think there's, certainly not in the States, there's very much academic understanding of what's going on in these moments. But it's something that I find fascinating. Right, so there you go. So these two, the prisoners are very malnourished. They've been, in the dark for seems like months. Well, I'll see if they have anything useful, and then I'll start slitting their throats. We can't take them with us. It's more merciful this way. What? Sensible thing! Murder, always sensible. Right? So, you guys get it. You're flipping back and forth between author and audience. I mean, at any one point, any of these young ladies are the author and audience. It's not, the GM is not always the author, the players are not always the audience. It flips. Cool. So right, that's the perspective shifting. But what's important to note too is that as you're phase modulating through these amazing things, you're also flipping between your character's perspective and your own perspective. Like you'll have, like, I don't know about you, when I play RPGs, it's kind of, my perspective is almost like a sine wave, where I'm kind of plunging in and out of the immersion, where, you know, I'm in the moment, I think I can visualize something momentarily and see it, and then my phone rings or something, or I have to look up a rule in the book or something like that. So I'm, you know, or I'm giving advice to another player saying like, oh, take this bonus, do this, do this. So I'm kind of like, you know, flipping between, even inside my audience and author perspective, I'm still looking at things from player perspective and then from character perspective. And I'm, you know, and so I'm kind of like, it's almost like I'm grouping the, you know, like some of the decisions that I would be making, you know, lumping them together, avatar and tactical decisions or whatever, emotional, social decisions. So right, yeah, there you go. I'm like ahead of my slides. I'm running. My slides are trying to catch up with me. So right, all right. So, but there's something. So there's another element. There's some dark matter that is knitting this all together. You know, it's one thing we can yell at each other and talk to each other, have a discussion about what's happening, and the next morning and come to a consensus about what the discussion was. That doesn't make it a game, or doesn't make it a role-playing game, doesn't make it immersive. We need elves and dragons, or similar. Oh, sorry about the punchline there. That's a Jared joke. It's gone. Jared joke's gone. He's not here to be my lovely joke guy. So right. So we call this the shared imagined space. In our, like, I think Ron or Paul, some of the indie RPG guys came up with this. But it's really important to understand that the game only exists through the interactions of the 4 or 5 players at the table, and by bouncing ideas rapidly back and forth between one another, that's when we're kind of like sketching. It's almost like we're firing electrons back and forth at one another, and through their shadow, we can see the events of the game. And this is this exists, it's very tenuous. You know, it disappears after the game, and that's why we have to edit it and retell it. But that's what we call the shared imagined space. It exists only in play. But it's like one of the things about the shared imagined space, and things that we often criticize other role-playing games about, is trying to either fill that space, just dump garbage in it, like dump all the machine guns and flamethrowers and tanks and things that don't belong in your vampire game in there, but also to remember and to recognize that the things that we talk about are the most important things. Everything else is secondary, at least. So, who here knows Noldor Sindar? Anyone? Noldor Sindar? Alright, we're gonna go. You work with me? Oh, Katri? You're okay? So you already know Noldor Sindar. So, tell us 3 facts about your elf, Katri.
She's got gray clothing on her. She's very pretty. She's living a little bit in the shadows, and she's very imaginative.
All right, rock and roll. So right. So there we have a sketch of Katri's character, and those are the 3 most important things. What didn't she describe? We don't know if she's a swords elf. If she's a sailor, if she's who she's related to. Excuse me. You know, we don't know if she made the Rings of Power or not. We don't know actually if she was Noldor or Sindar. She didn't say, but what's important is what Katri did say, and that's where we run. However, there are reasonable expectations that we now bring into play and use to knit this all together, to knit the decisions and the game interactions together. There are things, magical things. So by her description of her character, her gray clothing, for example, I might say to myself, oh, probably Sindar, right? Because I understand the genre, I'm bringing genre expectations to the game. So these are incredibly important, and again, a very powerful force, often unspoken, but it's not the only one, right? The meta plot of the game itself, so the genre is above, well above this. Like, we might be playing Shadowrun or something, and I might take a guess that she's, descended from Sindar or something. Meta plot, though, Vampire or Shadowrun or Fading Suns or something like this, also, your knowledge of the meta plot is going to affect how you make decisions, is going to affect how you interact, and it's going to create reasonable expectations. If we're playing, if we're playing in a fantasy game, it's unlikely that the game master will say, and a toaster flies by, a flying toaster. It's outside of genre expectations. In Shadowrun or Cyberpunk, if the GM said a flying toaster zips by, you might say, was that a drone? Is it armed? Is it a surveillance drone? Like you would, your genre expectations or in the meta plot would kick in there. But there are other reasonable expectations that are built. The rules, the reasonable expectations of your group. You might have some house rules, even some social house rules. Like one of my social house rules is that my lawyer friend doesn't lawyer while we're playing the game. He just stops. But also, as you begin to make decisions based on your characters, based on the game, and based on the reasonable expectations of the genre and the meta plot and the setting, you begin to knit together a web, a real fabric that will shape your decisions. There are things that you do in your group, and there are things that you don't do in your group based on your prior decisions. Can anyone tell me something that you just don't do in your group? Something that's not done? It's hard. It's a hard question. So, for example, in my group, and I don't think this is really too radical, but there's no sexual violence. It's off the table in my group. Just something that's not done. I know other groups that they have negotiated this. This is something that is okay. It's on the table in their groups because of some other stuff, not because they're psychopaths or anything. But that's also. But it's a very delicate and very rough area of play. It's a terrible thing. I don't want it in my games. But for example, that's part of the reasonable expectations of the group. It's part of the social fabric. All right. So what happens then when we have our reasonable expectations? We have our Sindar elf, and there's a dragon. Who gets to say if the Sindar elf gets toasted, it's turned to cinders? or slays the dragon, or negotiates with the dragon, or whatever. How do you resolve conflict with reasonable expectations? Well, the first touch point is going to be the rules of the game, but there's often an interface between who gets to say what, right? So, yeah, and if there's no conflict, we're not playing a game yet. By the way, we're just talking. We're just telling, we're telling a story at that point. We're not playing a game. Wait, I messed this up. Okay. Anyway, so when you come up to the dragon, can Katri say, "Yeah, I killed the dragon. It's dead," and describes its death? Like, does anyone play like that? Does anyone just have full narration authorship for the players? For the players? Me neither. No. Because it's boring. My friend Paul Sega, the author of My Life with Master, points it out that creating your own adversity sucks. Katri might describe how it happens, but that it might be a narrow victory. That gets exhausting after a while. We need something else, right? This having an intermediary between the players and the game, a player with a special role frees up the players now to make better social, emotional, and moral and tactical decisions. Avatar-based decisions are up to you. It's this weird X factor. If we're just sitting there, like we're each describing our own thing and doing our own thing, there's not a lot of excitement, there's not a lot of adversity. But if we put another player whose job it is to, one, be the interface, the touch point between you and the rules in some capacity, and also to be an advocate for your demise, suddenly the investment in immersion increases, at least in tabletop, and I think in some LARP too. Right, referees have their special role. They are a player in the game, and they must abide by the rules of the game, but they do so in a different capacity, and that's really important. If a referee plays a character, it's not fair. We call it Mary suing, where like they have a conflict of interest essentially, and has anyone ever had that where the referee plays a character and the character just gets more and more powerful? Like when you were kids, or it's the worst. It's the worst. Has anyone done it? Totally. That's the best, right? That's the best. I needed to get that Cavalier to 18th level, okay? So, it's hard. All right. So we've inserted this player in order to, not even inserted, this player was just part of the hobby. It was just understood that there would be a referee from day one, and because it makes play better. Also, in small groups, like why not? Why can't we all just decide together? Why can't you decide what happens to country and this and that? In small groups, consensus and democracy suck. It's too easy to intimidate one another. It's too easy to have block voting in small groups. It's just too easy to game the system with democracy and consensus. That's an American would say that. Right, and again, so handing off the power frees you to really own your character and own those decisions. So, who gets to say what happens? So who wants to be my Dwarven Prince? Who wants to be my Dwarven Prince? Who gets to say by what authority? No Dwarven Princes? Nobody likes dwarves. What? Really? I'll be the Dwarven Prince. I'll tell you all what to do. Alright, here you go. Alright. So you're gonna make a decree as the Dwarven Prince, a new law after your coronation. So you to your Dwarven subjects, or Elven subjects, or whatever you want.
Okay, our Dwarven runes may never be taught to any other race.
Great. Okay. So he says that the Dwarven runes may never be taught to any other race. The player makes this decree. Who enforces it? Where does that decree go? Right? Can the player enforce that? A little bit. Probably, within the reach of his hands. And maybe if the game has some macro scope things, he can make an administration roll or decrees roll. But the real authority for enforcing that actually slips back onto the referee to continue to remind and enforce and to create new adversity based on that. But it also filters out to the players to absorb it, accept it, or challenge it, because it now has become part of the setting. It's become part of the meta plot. In fact, it might even become a rule in the game, depending on the type of game you're playing. So this, this authorship and negotiation and rules is very complex. It's not solely on the referee's shoulders, but the referee is, is essentially the enforcer. It's a terrible word, but yeah. I believe that a game has to have rules. So what we have, in order to have our settings and our genres, and to have our characters and our decisions, we have to have these certain roles. We have to have rules that we all agree to. And so what you have is an incredible dynamic authority system in role-playing games. This thrills me because you're sitting down. You don't negotiate this every time you sit down. You maybe negotiate this once or twice in the maybe your group's history, or maybe sometimes you have a discussion based on a bad game. We have, but you know, these are like a lot of this is social dynamics. But we're so good at this. We're so good at sitting down and saying, okay, I will play this role temporarily. I will arbitrate for the rules. That means, and the players say yes. Okay, good. We agree to follow the rules, and off we go. Now, okay, now use the rules to set us in motion, or vice versa. And there's, you know, obviously, like in a card game or board game, we sit down and agree to play by the rules. We tacitly do it. Sometimes we might negotiate a house rule or something like that. In a sports game, obviously we agree to play by the rules and listen to the referee's call. But but RPGs are combining that into a immersive and fantastic experience. It's pretty rad. All right, so that's that's some of the internal clockwork of why I think RPGs are amazing. I think they're essentially irreproducible. But I'd like to zoom out for a minute and talk about some cultural stuff, some wider perspective. So, anybody know Greg Costecchian? Design of Paranoia, Star Wars, designed some influential games in the 80s, and then in '94, he wrote this essay, I have him up, but I must design, he's a huge inspiration for me, and he has been a real kind of grandfather of the indie movement. Hello. Do you want the microphone? So he's been kind of a grandfather of the indie movement, and you'll see in '94 he's so fucking far ahead of the curve. He's saying, he's acknowledging that RPGs have an audience that is their players, but he's also pointing to decisions and the interactivity, which we kind of blew out and explored. So go Greg. Greg is pretty much considered a quack in gaming land. But these guys, Eric Zimmerman and Katie Salen. Eric Zimmerman is a professor at NYU right now. He is very influential in the U.S. Electronic indie games circuit. But he wrote this fabulous book on games called Rules of Play with Katie Salen. And they talk about all types of games. It's a textbook designed for classrooms. But so I was reading it and I was devouring it. Oh, yes, exactly. This is what I thought all along. So I get to the part of role-playing games, about role-playing games, and it's this bullshit. He can't even be arsed to think about role-playing games. And he's a smart dude and very, very influential. And I was like, my flower wilted. And I was like, am I doing it wrong? Should I design indie games, with pixels? And I thought about this for a long time. And actually, this quote was the source of inspiration for me really thinking about RPGs. Because I realized that, fuck you, Eric Zimmerman, this is why they're great. Because Eric Zimmerman cannot wrap his very, very well-researched head around what an RPG is, we're safe. RPGs, they're not very profitable, they're weird, and they can't, scholars and theorists, obviously you guys have Knutepunkt, we don't have something like that in the States where you guys are at least exploring this stuff, but it's still very new, it's very cutting edge, it's very out there, which is awesome. And in your role-playing game book, all the bullshit that happens in games now, it can't be done. The technology for RPGs is so efficient and so well tried, books and dice and pencils and paper, that people cannot fuck with us the way they fuck with us in every other aspect of our lives, like advertising everywhere, or forcing you to pay for your sword or something, or for energy points. Sure, they can do it on your phone, but they're not going to do it at your D&D table. Because you can play that D&D book forever. I'm playing a 1981 version of D&D with a module written in 1979, and with character sheets that were actually printed at the time in the 80s. You could play these, that's a terrible product, right? It's 30 years old, and I'm still using it. It's still perfect. It still does exactly what it's supposed to. If people want to commodify that and sell it to me, they did a terrible job, right? Which is great, just fucking fantastic. Right? RPGs, zooming out, how many people have written an RPG? Even if they've never published it or anything like that, you just wrote it in your notebook or something like that, or a LARP even, right? Yes! Look at this, they're so easy to create. They're so compelling to design. How many people have passed off a part of their design, shared it so that someone else could use it in their LARP or RPG or something like that, right? Yes! Yeah, open source, it's a hip term. It's something we're open sourcing our software. It's something that we've done from the beginning. We have shared our designs because it's good and right. It's smart. I built all of my games on the backs of the games that have come before me. Games in the US, you cannot patent a game. Thank fucking God. We would be dead. They're also pretty green. I know we like to think how efficient our tablets are and our phones, and I can put 1,000 PDFs on that. Well, 1,000 books does not equal the hate that your iPad has done to the environment. A book is actually a very efficient piece of technology. I mean, bleach aside, even the bleach that we dump into the water from the paper, the barium or the magnesium, it's just not as awful as mining all of the rare metals to make all the circuits in our little tablet devices. And then the people that play RPGs, communities are easy to form. You can play them anywhere. You can play them outside. You can play them inside. You can play them by flashlight, by candlelight. Play them during a storm. Play them during the long, dark nights of winter. As long as we can speak to one another, we can play RPGs as people. As long as we can communicate. And that's huge. This is the case for many games, but it's a feature of RPGs too. But not having to worry about any kind of system or compatibility or anything like that is a good thing in this age of where games are made into these little commodities. But on the gaming side of things, RPGs are not solvable. This is a gaming term. Tic-tac-toe is solved, meaning that there's an optimal strategy for winning the game. Never, ever. Maybe in the most poorly designed module or something, but there's so many interactions in a role-playing game between all the social components, all the characters, all the uncertainty and randomization. There's never an optimal strategy that's at least possible to effect, and which means we can keep playing role-playing games forever and ever. Anyway, that's what I think it is. It looks like we have time for questions if anybody wants to ask a question. If you want to go. Yeah. Here. I must give you the box. I've been told otherwise. Hello.
Hi. Do you get in many conflicts with Vincent Baker on this?
So Vincent Baker is another indie RPG designer. He's a very good friend of mine. Vincent Baker and I are actually of one mind. Vincent is just much nicer than I am and much more patient. And I have promised Vincent that when he dies, I will apply to the Vatican for his beatitude, because I don't know why he bothers to talk to y'all. No, you're great, I love you. Talking about RPGs on the internet is the worst thing in the world. So, no, Vincent and I are almost completely of one mind.
Okay, the reason I ask this is because he hates the word SIS, shared dimension space. That's because, at least a year ago, I'm not sure on his thoughts on this right now, but he prefers RPGs as conversation. not shared imagined space, because everything that happens at the table happens at the conversation. Nothing that is in the conversation isn't in play, sort of.
Well, one, it's parsing terms, which we're so good at. We're just, nitpicking terms. Two, he's wrong. Any other questions? I don't need to explain that. He's wrong. He was here last year or year before or something, right? Well, Vincent, you're wrong. Okay. Anything else? No? Going once? Really? You guys are all like, yeah, totally. Oh, all right, purple, over there.
What do you think should role-playing games force or really encourage players to role-play more, like the rules?
What do I think they should encourage them to role-play more?
Role-play like do actions that you don't see in the dice.
Well, how do you play a game without engaging with the rules, first of all? So, if you'd like to play a game that isn't all talking, that's fine. You can play Amber. I heard Bridget was a guest here 10 years ago or something. So, I think I know where you're going, but I'm not going to fall in the trap of saying, like, there's when we roll the dice, we're doing this, but when we talk in funny voices, we're actually role-playing. Because that's not what's happening. The entire spectrum, like I don't know if you were here for this presentation I just gave, but the entire spectrum of activities is the role-playing game. If you would like more performance in your game, if that's what you're talking about, if you would like to more evocative or more immersive performance, that is possible. You can design rules for that, but you don't always have to have dice going to. You don't even have to have dice rules. I am from the school of incentive, where you incentivize behavior that you want at the table, but that's not necessarily the only way. There are other ways to do that. But we can talk about a design. We could design the game after this, but I'm not gonna do it with the limited time that we have. Any other questions? I think down here, he had his hand up first. So we'll then here and here.
Okay. You said that there cannot be gamification in a role-playing game. How about if the Dungeon Master gives you an in-game mechanical benefit from good role-playing?
So, if the...
I play my dwarf, so I speak in Scottish accent, and that gives me XP.
Right, well, so that's an avatar-based decision that you made for a tactical reward, right? That I'll get gains your tactical reward later.
Game Master manipulated me to do that.
That's not Game Master manipulation. It is part of the game. I mean, if the Game Master is doing it, if those rules are not part of the game and the Game Master is giving you a reward outside of the game, that's a social decision that's happening in the game. If you're saying like, aha, this is gamification, no, you can't gamify a game. It's a game. You can break the rules of the game. You can play optimally or suboptimally in the game. Those are things. You can manipulate the game. You can exploit the game. But you're like the buzzword of gamification. I don't think it.
Yeah, maybe we talk about a different thing then. Maybe.
Sure. I mean, the game master basically is incentivizing shitty behavior right there. Yeah. That's what's happening. So another question over here?
Just a question of your categorization. Have you thought of the 5 categories you gave? How long have you been thinking about them? Have you thought or rolled other categories into the 5 that you have, or thought about dividing one of them?
This is remembering what I forgot, though. Remembering what we went over. I mean, this presentation probably came from about, oh my goodness, 6 years of conversations and research, and then years before that of participating on internet forums like IndieRPGs.com. Trying to think, we did, I can't remember. I mean, we came from a pretty intense conversation, but we seem pretty comfortable with the 5. Somebody brought up a possible 6th last time I presented this, and again, it slips my mind, but I'll see if it comes back to me. Sorry, it's not a good answer. Anyone else? Oh, over here. Good arm.
Yeah, both those categories.
About them. Oh, wait, maybe he's got a suggestion.
Yeah, I'm pretty dubious of the moral category.
Oh, goody! You're totally wrong!
Certainly you can make moral decisions at the game table, like, I'm not gonna bitch like the GM for being stupid, or I'm not going to manipulate my friends so they'll get mad at each other and ignore me. These are moral decisions. But a decision, no, we're not gonna kill the goblin, that is an arbitrary decision by definition. If you can't make a moral decision about fictional characters behaving with fictional characters, you can make a moral decision about, I will not glorify murder in this game. That's a moral decision. But
Have you ever, so do you read books?
sure,
Have you ever had your stomach turned by an event in a book?
sure.
Then you can make moral decisions in a game.
No. Those are aesthetic definitions, and you can make moral decisions about, I will not glorify these, I will not drive these kind of politics in here.
Hold on. So has anyone? Let's see what the mob says. Has anyone stayed their hand from something in a game that actually nauseated them? That's where they said, I can't. You said to yourself, I can't do this. You don't think that's a moral reaction?
No.
That's a physical reaction?
I think
That's not their character.
That's bleed in action, and when you have character and player getting confused,
you can make maybe.
It is more like aesthetic. This is I don't want to do this, but it's not a moral decision.
There is no character. There's only the player. The character is a lie. The character is a series of decisions that you, the player, are making. The character does not exist. It never did. It never will. It's not possible. You're a person. You're a human being, and you're wearing a mask. And underneath that mask, you're making moral decisions. There's no two ways about it.
Then your strawman of stomach turning is horrible. Because if I make a moral decision not to kill a goblin, but I'm not feeling queasy about this action, I'm not going to kill this goblin, then that's either you require this strong emotional connection and reaction, in which case we're really talking about bleed, and this character you claim doesn't exist, or you don't require it, in which case it is not moral at all. It is simply aesthetic and avatar-based.
No, there are in the decision to kill the goblin. There are 4 different possibilities there. You don't always have to be making a moral decision there, but it is a moral decision whether or not to commit murder. Like, there's just not, like, at least here in America, where I live, it is a moral decision whether or not to commit murder.
I explain that in a different way. I think I know what he's talking about. I would like to explain it so that he's telling a story of an event that includes a moral decision, but he's talking about he's not the one making the moral decision. He's describing a situation where there is a moral decision which can resonate with the players, because moral decisions are important to us as people, as in other stories, as in movies, as in books. We love moral decisions, we love pondering over them, but he's not actually making the decision. George R.R. Martin is not making a moral decision when he's killing characters. But that's his point. I mean, I'm not completely satisfied with it, but
That's completely
I'm not with you either. Did I make it right?
Close enough.
Yeah, okay.
The beautiful thing about the RPGs is that the authorship is very close. There's a thin layer of paper between us and the actual decisions being made. Now, there is a certain distance. Obviously, you're not murdering anything, thank God. None of us are murdering anything, right? We're not on the streets having to decide, like, my life or this goblin's life. I'm not saying that. And I'm not saying that the decisions in an RPG carry that same weight. I'm not saying that when we discuss the fate of prisoners, whether we can afford to feed them or march them out, that is, it's not real. It is not a real decision. We're playing a game. But inside of that game, this is a space for us to explore that moral area. And our morals will come into play when making that decision in the game. That's the great thing is I have a microphone. All right, so pass it back. Pass it back.
Kind of comment on that moral discussion. So I would like to kind of open a new perspective in that. I personally think that you simply cannot learn morality, any level of morality without stories. So moral decisions are not this kind of more important kind of thing. If you think of role-playing game, is kind of how you can use them to reflect your own morality and how you can adapt new perspectives to morality.
Sure, and I might, if I had captives, I would probably do whatever I could to feed them. I would like to think I would at least. I don't know. But in the role-playing game, I might make the moral decision to do otherwise, to leave them behind or to send them off on their own. It's still a decision, even though it's still a space that I, as a person, am able to explore, and I'm recognizing that I'm going against my own values. I might not make it for my character. All right, but another question up here.
Yes, and I have, sorry.
All right, very quick, lightning round.
Yes, so one question is, what do you think of games that are really strongly focused on world instead of character? For instance, science fiction or microscope.
They're role-playing games, so I'm not going to say they're not. You're obviously making very light, not necessarily, I don't want to diminish them, but your investment in a single character is not as much as if you were investing in a character played over time. Right, you're jumping from character to character, and you're investing in technology or movements or stuff like that. So, I'm down with them. I think they fall under this umbrella. I think Joshua would agree with me for shock, but yeah, I think they're role-playing games, and I'm totally pro. But all right, last one, real quick.
Thanks. What about story-based decisions? When you explicitly set out to stay at the beginning, reincorporate stuff from earlier on, and have a sort of a middle, and color your characters and modify their decisions based on what would be interesting from the point of view of a satisfying climax to this session.
Yeah, I think we could scrub that into, it doesn't fit in Avatar, we scrub it into maybe social or emotional, but that would be worth considering, a narrative-based decision. I've done that in games, that would definitely be worth looking at. Anyway, we're out of time. You can all yell at me in the hallway for the next hour, that's fine. I'm totally down with that. That's what I'm here for. Thank you all so much. I've had a great weekend. Thank you for listening to me.
Ropecon.